Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Here in the Bay Area, we actually had rain in September. It's a little odd.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd for us.
I'm here ready for our quick turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, we get back to the season starting, so we're back to doing 2 a weeks, and just right away, Thursday night game, so it's super condensed schedule. But like you said, we just had our deep dive breakdown on the Packers Week 1 matchup against the Lions, so that's in your feed if you want to go check that out. And like you mentioned, quick turnaround, Thursday night game against the Commanders, we're here to preview that for you, so that's exciting. But yeah, quick turnaround, right, Dad? Just like right away, just right back into the thick of things. I mean, it does kind of like feel like a really condensed schedule at the start of the season, but I guess we get that mini bye after this, so that's something, right?
That's going to be kind of nice, actually, feeling like, as we'll talk about in a minute, we're a little bit banged up. And maybe it'll get us a little time to get our own feet under us. We're having that.
Yeah, it's the start of the season for everyone,
week
you know?
2, we didn't have a full preseason kind of vibe going on.
Exactly.
So we're settling in. We're trying to remember to like take the tags off of the dog before we start, so we don't have to start over again because she's making a lot of noise.
Yep, make sure to have our notes actually open and scroll to the right page, because just now I was at the bottom and I was like, wait a minute, what are we talking about?
Is this even the right page anymore?
Is this even the right document that I'm on? But anyway, so yeah, we're here to preview that. Before we get into that, though, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear today, subscribe, whether that's, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Leave a review, leave a comment, tell a friend, tell a stranger. But yeah, follow us on all those things. Talk to us about Packers stuff. Leave a comment. We love talking to, Packers fans everywhere. Best fan base in the world. And then follow us on Blue Sky at Father-Son Packer for, updates on when new episodes are out, content from other Packers content creators, updates on roster moves, injury reports, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One-stop shopping for everything Titletown. But Dad, speaking of injury reports, I guess we should just get into previewing this game and starting off with the injury report. Start off with some negatives, unfortunately. So the official injury report is out. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon. So we do actually have the, official designations. And so starting off with the Packers side of things, a couple players out, and that's Bo Melton and Brenton Cox with a shoulder and groin respectively. Those were ones that we kind of expected, but so neither of them are going to be available. And then we do have 5 players questionable for the Packers, and that is Zach Tom with the oblique that he was forced to, he was knocked out of the last game with. He has not practiced this week. Same with Aaron Banks with an ankle injury. He has not practiced this week. They're both questionable. Zane Anderson with a knee was limited all week. Remember, he did not play last week, so he is questionable as well and was questionable last week. Same with Nate Hobbs. He was questionable last week. He's been limited all week. He has a knee as well. Might make his debut for the Packers this week. I guess we will see. And then Micah Parsons with that back has been limited all week, and he is questionable as well. He was also questionable last week. But Dad, let's talk a little bit about the 2 guys who have not practiced this week, Tom and Banks, because Matt LaFleur did say on Tuesday that both of them are going to get all the way up until game time to decide on whether or not they're going to be available. And he did also say that neither injury is long-term, which we've talked about, and both have enough experience to play without having practiced this week. And that's per Ryan Wood reported all of that based on Matt LaFleur's press conference on Tuesday. But Dad, I guess first question is, and I guess main question is, if they are not able to play, how do you see the offensive line shaking out?
So my personal guess is that Morgan will go at left guard for Banks, which they did when Banks was out during training camp.
And during the game on Sunday.
And during the game on most recently, just on Sunday. And I also think, based on who first came into right tackle, that it will be Kennard coming in at right tackle for Tom.
Okay, so you think it's going to be pretty similar to what they did in game on Sunday?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a preferred, and that they did put Belton in late, but that was late.
I think that was just for reps.
Like they had it in control. That their preference was Kennard at right guard and Morgan at
Kennard at right
tackle and Morgan at left guard.
Yeah. I think that's probably fair. That's probably what I would guess too. I think there's a world where they just liked Kennard in game more because he has more experience. He's a veteran, whereas Belton as a rookie maybe wasn't as ready. Like, hey, you got to go right now. But maybe with like a week to prepare, although I guess short week, so maybe it's kind of a similar deal. Maybe they'd feel more comfortable with Belton given that he has a little more time to prep. I think we'll see. I think the left guard spot is 100% Morgan. If it's not Banks, like I think that's a given. I think the question is just at right tackle whether or not it would be Kennard or Belton. But I see what you're saying where if they went Kennard last week, it's a short week. Maybe if it was a full week, maybe they, get Belton ready. But I think maybe just better safe than sorry, and they're going to go with Kennard there again.
I think they just feel like Kennard is more like assignment sure and reliable. He's been in the league a few years. They know that LaFleur won't have to be yelling at him on his way to the locker room at halftime.
I guess we'll see. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. Kennard had some good reps, had some ups and downs, had some misses as well. But I think definitely for a guy who has only been there 2.5 weeks, did have a nice day on Sunday, all things considered.
Yeah, I think it also is you'll have to think about who's going to be active on game day. I think Jennings is going to be active because they will probably have to elevate. If they're going to have two guys down, they might elevate offensive linemen as well so that they get up to, I think that they'll have to elevate somebody to get to 8 if they both miss the game.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Over to the Commander side of the injury report, they have 2 players listed as questionable, and that's punter Tress Way with a back injury and starting defensive end Dietrich Wise Jr. with a knee injury. And the Dietrich Wise one is definitely one to keep an eye on because he was estimated as a full participant Monday and Tuesday, but then was limited on Wednesday. But, with those being estimates, I think that's maybe a little less concerning for him, just given the fact that, when it's, actually how they're practicing and they go backwards, that's never ideal. But when it's 2 estimates and then backwards, I think that's a little less concerning. But those are definitely the 2 that they have listed. And Wise, I think, is the one to definitely keep an eye on there, right?
Yeah, and it could be that they've, limited on him on the day before the game just to not work him too hard on a short week.
That's a good point,
I expect them to be able to play. And I can't remember if I saw something from the Commanders coach about their optimism.
I hadn't, but I would also expect them to play, given that they're questionable and they did both practice this week. But yeah, those are the 2 to keep an eye on for them. So that does it for the injury report. Moving on to a couple quick, facts about the game. It's going to be in Green Bay on Thursday night, 7:15 p.m. Lambeau time on Prime. Over under of 48 with the Packers favored by 3.5 for an implied score of about 26-22 Green Bay. In terms of the storylines surrounding these 2 teams, both come into this week 2 matchup 1-0. Important matchup in terms of, I would say, seeding in the NFC. So could be a big tiebreaker later in the year. Packers, 1-0 after beating the Lions at home week 1 and tied for first in the NFC North. Meanwhile, the Commanders are 1-0 after beating the Giants 21-6 in week 1 and, have really high expectations after, making the NFC Championship game in Jayden Daniels' rookie year. I think this is, a matchup between 2 teams who have really high expectations for where they can place in the NFC and should be a really good game, right?
Yeah, I'm sure both teams are hoping that this is the deciding game of the tiebreaker for the number 1 overall seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what both teams have their sights set on this season. And I think, this could end up being a very important game. Moving on, though, Dad, to the meat of our breakdown. I guess, we're doing our important stats for this game. I think we each have 3. Maybe you brought 4 or 5 since that's something that you tend to do. But
there might be a number 4 and the numbers might go up to 4.
A secret 4th option. But
I have
Dad,
to change my numbering so that it's not so obvious.
Yeah, I was just go up to 7 one time. But anyway, do you want to start us off with your first important stat?
So I'll start with the Commanders running backs, in particular, Ja'Cory Bill Krosky-Merritt, rookie.
Bill.
And so he was 4th on the week in the league with 82 yards on only 10 carries.
Yeah, great debut for him.
Yeah, and he had 8.2 yards per carry. He was also 5th in the league in yards after contact per attempt at 4.4. And it got off to kind of a slow start at the beginning of the game. It looked like it was all Eckler. And I have to confess, I lost my patience.
He dropped him mid-game? Crazy.
In the middle of the game.
It's that's a terrible idea.
Second quarter, I dropped it.
What were you thinking? I guess you needed
a kicker to defense. So I had to make a decision.
Impatient.
It was very impatient. I could have waited till the end of the game. There was no reason not to wait till the end of the game. And I don't know. I couldn't handle it. So I was like, I got to do it now. And then instant regret.
Yeah, now he's going to make us pay for your impatience on Sunday. Now he's going to really get us.
Take it out on the entire Packers team because of one
I mean, he had
fantasy
a great game on
football.
Sunday. He had a couple explosive runs. Like, I mean, he averaged 8 yards a carry, and I think I saw that the Commanders as a whole were like second on the week in rushing success rate. I think I saw. But yeah, their running game really got going on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you got to watch him and Daniels as well. I think that having a running quarterback, may open up some lanes for the running backs.
Definitely makes it easier on the running, like the rest of the running game when defenses have to kind of cover, two different guys out of the backfield. But
It's like old school wishbone. They got so many options. What I'm going to do with this ball? They're going to run in any direction.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of my first stat. I mean, was there anything else you wanted to say about the running backs? I mean, I think, Eckler also big threat in the passing game, is able to work, out of checkdowns, yards after catch, stuff like that. That's definitely something to keep an eye on as well, for sure.
Yeah, and I think when it's, passing situations like that he's probably going to be in there because of his
veteran presence.
Veteran and well-established catching passes out of the backfield skills, which he did a fair amount of in the last game as well. I mean, he had a decent game also. But he came up with a shoulder, but then was not on the final injury report. They was limited a little bit with some kind of shoulder injury, but then I guess it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah, not on the injury report. So it seems like, good news there. For me, you kind of mentioned it, but my first thing I wanted to look at was like rushing quarterbacks and scrambling, because I think we all know Jayden Daniels is awesome overall, but he is like a super dynamic runner as well. So last week, this is kind of something I'm looking at is, so last week the Packers did a really good job of converting pressures to sacks. We converted 25% of our pressures into sacks, which is a really good number on Goff. And, surprisingly, actually, the Giants converted 30% of their pressures into sacks against Jayden Daniels last week. But I do think it's going to be just a different level of challenge, like converting those against, Daniels, who is so dynamic with his legs compared to Goff. I mean, there might not be a bigger gap one week to another in terms of, dynamicism of the athletes that you're facing at the quarterback position. Daniels was...
Are you saying that Daniels is not as easy to run down as Goff?
That is what I am saying. And I do think it's going to be something to, keep an eye on, because, I think that obviously it's two problems, because it's like either you're rushing outside as an edge rusher, and that leaves kind of a gap for the running or for the quarterback to, push through in the middle and like take the ball upfield, or you kind of try and pinch outside, but then that leaves, space for them to, peel out of the pocket and either make a play with their legs or, make a throw on the run. So I do think that's something to keep an eye on. And Daniels did take a lot of sacks last year, which I was a little bit surprised by when I went and looked. In 2024, despite giving up just the 24th highest pressure rate, the Commanders had the 7th highest sack rate allowed. That's per NFL Pro. And I did think that was interesting, but the Athletic Football Show pointed out that, like, Jayden Daniels took a lot of sacks, but a lot of them were like 1 yard sack, 0 yard sack, like back to the line of scrimmage. Like, so he wasn't actually losing a lot of EPA per sack. Like, a lot of his sacks were not high impact sacks, and like the gap between the number of sacks he had and the total EPA lost on those sacks is pretty big and bigger than other quarterbacks. So that is something to keep in mind, that despite the fact that, he did take a lot of sacks, they weren't as impactful as some other players. Overall, though, I just think it's going to be a much tougher task to take him down than it was to take down Goff, obviously. Daniels is like a prolific scrambler. He actually scrambled 75 times last season per PFF, which led the league. And the gap between him and second was as big as the gap between second and 15th. Like, he had 75 and the next highest was 50. Like he had 50% more than the next guy. And on those scrambles, per FTN Fantasy, he averaged 8 yards a carry and had the highest total EPA generated from scrambles. And like, I could throw more and more numbers at you about, like when he scrambled, success rate on scrambles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just, we all know he is just a really dynamic threat with his legs. And that was part of the reason they were so good on fourth downs, was because, which like they converted like an ungodly amount. It was like 87% or something of fourth downs like they converted, which is like by far the most ever in terms of percentage of fourth downs converted. But like, he's just super dynamic. I mean, he's a great thrower of the football too. Like, I don't want to just focus on what he's able to do with his legs, but like, I think that the scrambling is definitely like the number one thing I'm looking at this week, because I do think that that's, going to be key, because it's such a stark contrast from, playing against Goff last week.
Yeah, but it's not that unusual for scrambling quarterbacks to pick up sacks.
That's true. They try and make
holding onto the ball a long time. Like Fields, I think, didn't he used to get sacked all the time for the Bears? Of course, their line wasn't great, but I think it is, and maybe Murray as well. But that quarterbacks who hold on the ball and wait to the last minute to try to get anything they can out of it
But I
often
do
goes to
think,
scrambling.
but I do think, given that he's holding the ball so much and he's trying to make those plays, the fact that he doesn't lose a lot of, expected points on those sacks is like a testament to how good he is.
Right, he's able probably to turn up field when he's under pressure and almost get back to line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, we've all watched Jayden Daniels play. Like he's really good. He's really good.
And
so like
his,
I do think
like arm talent, I was gonna say that the Bears are probably familiar with how far he can throw the ball from last year.
I mean, he can throw the ball a ways. He's really, and I was actually surprised because like when I think of him, I think of like, oh, like dynamic deep passer, prolific with his legs. He actually didn't throw the ball deep quite as often as I thought he did last year. He was actually like in like the 20s in terms of like deep throw rate. He didn't do it as much as I like. When you think about him, I'm like thinking about all those like beautiful over the shoulder throws to Terry McLaurin. Like that's what I'm thinking about. Like the one against the Bengals.
Hail Mary at the end of the game.
I was thinking about the one against the Bengals in like whatever week 2, week 3, where he like is like close to the end of the game. I think it was Monday Night Football. He puts it right over the shoulder to him. I think it was Terry McLaurin. But either way, like that's what I think about. He didn't actually throw it as deep as like I thought he did, or as often as I thought he did. But that is definitely in his bag. And I do think like I didn't mention this in the storylines, but maybe I should have. Like in some ways, like a duel between like maybe the two best quarterbacks in the NFC, like or two best young quarterbacks in the NFC, like you could argue. So I think that's like a storyline here as well. But Dad, what was your next like interesting stat, or did you want to touch on the scrambling at all?
Well, I kind of already gave my thoughts on some of the scrambling. I think it does the whole like really being really good on fourth down on offense for them. It's like is not a vibe I really like, considering how we did last
well
year.
We did well against it last week, but last year it was definitely
last year was not great. But hoping for better things.
Yeah, exactly. Hoping for better things, that like hoping for more of what we looked like on Sunday against fourth downs as opposed to how we looked last year on fourth downs. But yeah, what was your next stat though?
So the Washington offensive line actually held up pretty well in week 1. According to PFF, Daniels was just the 10th lowest pressured QB, but according to NFL Pro Scoring, it was even better with the 3rd lowest pressure percentage at only 21.6.
Yeah, and they've made some investments there. I mean, two new tackles, like trading for Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, drafting Connerly in the first round for a right tackle out of Oregon. So like they've invested at those bookends, and then they don't have Cosme because he got hurt at the end of the last year. So they have a new right guard coming in. So there's a lot of shuffling there, but they definitely looked really good week 1 against what we think is an awesome Giants defensive line with like Lawrence and Abdul Carter and Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. Like they did quite well in week 1 against those guys.
Right. So it wasn't against a defensive front that
we think is bad. It's when we think it's like one of the best in the league. Like that's like where some of the Giants' optimism came in, was like, hey, they might have the best defensive line in the league, and they really got like pretty much stonewalled for good chunks of that game.
Yeah, and I think you could say that the Commanders' performance is probably going to be better than average, or at least better than expected against that front. So it's suggesting that they have a good offensive line this year, better than last year, where as you mentioned, he ended up taking a lot of sacks last year, and maybe that won't be the same this year.
Yeah, and although the pressure rate allowed wasn't very high last year, so like it was still a pretty good offensive line last year. Like, but they did 2 new tackles and 2 new like high investment tackles. So like that's right. Like that was probably the goal for their offseason, was to make the offensive line even better. And through 1 week, the results are definitely looking good for them there. Anything else you wanted to touch on there? Or should I hop over to the next one? Because mine's on the other side of the trenches. Because the Commanders over the offseason made a lot of investments to the defensive line and their defensive front. Bringing in Javon Kinlaw, Von Miller, Eddie Goldman, Dietrich Wise, Jacob Martin. All 5 of those guys played significant snaps on Sunday. They had 8 different defensive linemen register 10 or more pass rush snaps in their last game. Packers had 7 for reference, and 8 was the second most in the league amongst all teams. And all of them had at least 1 pressure, which was tied for the most different defensive linemen with a pressure in the league. So they have like a real stable of guys that they like to rotate. They're going to be keeping those guys fresh. They're going to be, bringing them in over and over and over again, rotating them in. And I do just think that that's definitely a wrinkle, and something to keep an eye on in this game is like they're going to keep having fresh bodies along that defensive line. And I think that's why they kind of invested in maybe not like superstar guys. Like Von Miller was a superstar. I think nowadays I don't think we would consider him that. And like a lot of guys who are like B pluses, but just a lot of them. And so they're just going to keep throwing wave after wave after wave of these guys at you. And I do think that that's going to present some like, present like a challenge for the offensive line is like, hey, like you're going to be on snap, whatever, snap 50. Those guys are on snap 20. Like they're going to still have a lot in the tank and you're going to have to be ready for that.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I'm worried about. I'm going to go into my next thing because I think that unfortunately matches up with something I'm worried about.
Okay.
On the Packers side, that Love's passing splits under pressure versus when he wasn't pressured in week 1 weren't great according to PFF.
Okay.
His passing grade when he was kept clean was 91.2 for PFF, but when PFF scored it was under pressure, his passing grade was 32.5.
I wonder how much of that was the throw he almost threw right to Anzalone.
They counted it as 2 turnover worthy plays. I think they also probably dinged him for that throw that didn't count in the end as well as a play he made.
Because I was trying to think of the second ones, like because there was the one with the penalty on the play, but I couldn't think of the other one.
The Anzalone one. So I'm thinking they may have dinged him for that. I'm not sure what they called the second turnover worthy play, but that was part of it. I think there was a major mark against him. His yards per attempt was 3.6 when he was under pressure compared to 10 yards per attempt when he was kept clean. So a big difference there as well in terms of how much.
Yeah. And these are
more productive.
So you're worried about that? I'm not super worried about that because we've seen like in the past, he has had really good numbers under pressure. And this is a pretty small sample size. So I'm not super worried about that.
Small sample size.
But after, like, definitely in week 1, it was definitely much better when kept clean than when pressured. That's for sure. But I guess I'm not super worried about it. If it becomes a trend over the course of the season, like maybe I would be. But one game versus what we've seen over a few seasons of him being good under pressure, I guess I'm not super worried about it, but I see what you're saying. Like in week 1, that definitely was like there was a contrast there.
And it's not all bad. I mean, there's a mix of things out. As you mentioned, the Commanders pass rush, they had the 7th best PFF grade on the week in week 1 and had the 4th highest pressure rate in week 1 per NFL Pro, but only the 19th fastest time to pressure.
Yeah.
So they weren't winning really quickly. And Green Bay only gave up the 2nd slowest time to pressure on the week to Detroit. So
and I will say,
slow developing pressure.
The Giants' offensive line is like it's average, and they were also missing Andrew Thomas, who's their best lineman. So like it's not a great unit. So like they did have a bit of a matchup advantage, but that's definitely like their defensive line is good. Like that's definitely something that is going to be like a matchup to watch for. Especially if the Packers' offensive line is banged up too, and like doesn't have our preferred starters.
And the guy I'll be keeping an eye on their side is was it Dorrance Armstrong? Mm-hmm. He had 9 pressures, 3 quick pressures, and 1 sack against the Giants, and had 10 sacks last year for the Commanders. And he has, I think, 2 9-sack years on his resume as well when he was with Dallas, I think it was. So he's got some pass rush juice, and so. I don't know what side I think he actually, what I was reading, I was trying to figure out what side I think he moves around a bit. So they might be hunting matchups with him out there.
Yeah, and I do think, like, probably if it's Kennard, whoever it is at right tackle, if it's not Tom, you're going to have to help them, like, a good amount. You're going to have to chip. You're going to have to bring, and the running backs are going to have another good game in pass protection like they had on Sunday. Hopefully they can repeat that. But, Jacobs had a nice day in pass protection, too, on Sunday.
Had a very nice pickup.
So I have to, keep that going. Tight ends are going to have to chip, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, that's definitely going to be something where it's like, their defensive line, like, they've got a lot of bodies there, and they're, like, a lot of solid players are going to rotate through, and you're going to have to be ready for them. The next one I had was on the other side of the ball, unless there was anything else you wanted to talk about with, the pass protection, or...
No, this is something I'll be a little...
Keeping an eye on.
Little nervous about.
Fair enough.
Little tight about.
Fair enough. The next thing I'm looking at is the screen game. The Commanders throwing screens, the Packers defending screens. So last week, the Packers actually did just an awesome job of sniffing out screens and tackling. Much better than last year. Last year we were like middle of the pack in EPA per attempt on screens, but bottom 10 in yards per attempt allowed. And we also had the fifth most screens attempted against us. So teams were throwing a lot of screens against us. The Lions last week, though, attempted 4 screens and only got 13 yards out of it per FTN fantasy. And both those numbers are per FTN fantasy. So much better. The Commanders, though, run a lot of screens, or at least they did last year. Daniels threw the 7th most screens in the league last year, despite, playing one fewer game, like he missed one game. And they weren't super efficient on those plays. They only averaged about 5.5 yards per attempt, and they were actually in the negative in EPA per attempt. But I do think that's, a big reason why they made a major point of bringing in Deebo Samuel. And he's a dynamic threat with the ball in his hands. And so I think that's just going to lean more into the screen game for them. And I do think that's something that we're going to have to be ready for, come Thursday.
Yeah, and that's something we didn't talk about, though, the additions of Samuel to their lineup. We can talk about that a little bit later as well, and we just want to riff on stuff unprepared, which, no problem.
Yeah, we can do that. But let's just riff on it now. I mean, the Packers have played Deebo Samuel many, many times. There have been a lot of matchups there as he's been, with the Niners for a lot of years. He's a tough player to play against. I mean, it's funny because it feels like you watch him run like without the ball in his hands and you're like, okay, like solid. And then he gets like the Mario star, like when he gets the ball in his hands, like the ball hits his hands and somehow he's like 3 times faster and like 2 times more physical than he was without it. And so it's like, that's going to be, a key to this game is tackling and getting him down. And the Packers did a good job of tackling the playmakers of the Lions on Sunday, but it's another challenge in this game.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd like to hope it carries over, and it also kind of also applies to our defense of the screen game, is we had defenders felt like more than one often right next to the ball to the receiver as soon as he caught
rallying to the ball, and Dan Orlovsky on I forget where, it might have been on Twitter, was like posting about how impressed he was with, the Packers defense rallying to the football. And like, he was like counting the hats. He's like, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys at the ball, like all sprinting to the ball. And like, that's the sign of a good defense. And like, we just have to keep that up this week for sure. Like, given the fact that they love, those little dump offs, those little screens, like getting yards after catch, like those are going to be important moments in the game.
Right. And so far after 1 week, we've looked a lot better at it this year. We've been good at it this year. And
yeah,
so
but it is only 1 week. So hopefully we can carry it over. Yeah.
So it's a trend.
Hopefully. What's your next stat?
So I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of kind of the Commanders' expectations this year compared to what they did last year. Mm-hmm. And the main thing, so they're 12-5, which was like the tied for the sixth best record in the league in the regular season. But their record was bolstered by going 8-2 in games with 7 points or less. And the correlation in your win percentage in one-score games is very low from 1 year to the next. Essentially, I think like no predictive value at all. And suggesting that their actual team strength last year was not as good as their record would say.
That is true, but there are exceptions for the one-score thing when you have a super dynamic quarterback. Like the Chiefs' one-score record every year is like really good. And that's because Patrick Mahomes is really good. And so like Jayden Daniels might just be one of those guys where like when it comes down to it, like he's able to make those plays, those big time plays that like push you over the line. Like that's on the table for them.
Yeah. And I found an older posting on this concept that also that exception also applied to the Peyton Manning Colts. They're like they did it 3 different times and no other team actually did it where they improved. So on average, teams with an extreme one-score success rate, so that's like 5 plus 5 or more in close game success rate, have seen their win total decrease by 3 games in the next year. Mm-hmm. It's like 3 1/4. And I saw this both from Google AI and this was included. What I read more detail was this post from a post named Anarchy 99 on the Football Guys. So this was actually like 10 years ago. So it included some a lot of older games and
deep dive.
It had those. So the post was older, but it had those 3 Colts years where they were the 3 exceptions. so that like 3.25 fewer wins per game. So not just like how they did overall, in the one score games, just actually got worse the next year. And teams that had a bad record actually improved by like 4.
Yeah.
If you were on the other extreme.
It's the classic regression, like that.
Yeah,
like most
just
teams
regressing to the mean
in one.
So,
I mean, it's a game with an oddly shaped ball that takes weird bounces, and there is just inherent randomness. There are 23 different things moving around on every single play, like 22 players and the ball. Like there's a lot of variables in every single play in every single game, and so you're going to get some regression back. But like you mentioned, sometimes when you have that elite quarterback, sometimes you can overcome that regression.
Yeah, and this also the nature of the scoring system lends itself to high variance because a random bounce of the ball can give you 7 points.
Yeah,
not just
right
like
away.
One run. You get like 7 points, so it makes a big difference tacking that on.
Well, it's the Al Pacino also. It's a game of inches. Like if you reach out and you miss the block by this much, it's the difference in the game. Like that could change the entire outcome of the game.
Right. If you miss breaking up a pass by less than an inch.
That's the whole game right there, and that's just literally like a fraction of a second. Like that's how big the margins are.
Yeah, and actually there are some other metrics that are more predictive of a team's performance from one year to the next. One of those is point differential, which would have put the Commanders at 10th last year instead of finishing with the 6th best record, which they did. Green Bay, by comparison, actually would have been 6th by point differential last year. And then another metric, DVOA, which also takes into account strength of schedule. The Commanders last year were 12th in DVOA rather than 6th best. And Green Bay, on the other hand, was 4th. And their record was not 4th best. So there's some...
there's definitely some like underlying, measurements that maybe, that the Commanders are like a regression candidate this year. Like you said, point differential, DVOA. They played an easier schedule last year. They'll play a harder schedule this year. At the same time, though, you do have to, you play the teams that are on your schedule. They did win those games. They made it to the NFC Championship game. Like they won 2 playoff games. Like, so I see that there's 2 sides to the argument. I think both make sense. Like the numbers, the analytics definitely like show that like, hey, maybe they weren't quite as good as their record last year. But then at the same time, like when the playoffs hit, like they really went out there and they did the thing. I mean, they beat a good Tampa Bay team. They beat a really good Lions team, and they made the NFC Championship game. Now, that game didn't go as well for them, but they still made it to like the final 4 teams with a rookie quarterback and a new head coach and play caller. Like that is still an accomplishment. And so you could argue that, with all that inexperience, they're able to improve because of that lack of experience and going to their, second year for the quarterback and, second year with like those 2 guys of the coaching staff in the system. Although, interestingly enough, they are the oldest team in the league, which you wouldn't think. Like, that's kind of surprising because we think like, oh, quarterback super young, must be a young team. It's like, no, the rest of the team is like quite old. So that is something to keep in mind. But like, I do see like both sides where it's like, oh, analytics wise, like prime for regression, but also like there's some, arguments that like, hey, like a lot of things were new there. And so there's chance for growth. Like I could see both sides.
Yeah. And the other thing that's in their favor, actually, a lot of those teams that excelled in the 1-score games ended up losing first game of the playoffs. They did that kind of exceptionalism did not carry over into the playoffs, in contrast to what the Commanders did last year, where they actually did well in the playoffs. They didn't fall off. Yeah. Now, one thing I've been thinking about it, should put in the notes, this whole idea about the Commanders being, the oldest team in the league. Short turnaround.
That's true.
But maybe it'll have a bigger effect on them, and also they have to travel.
Yeah. Having like the Thursday night game at home, I think is a big deal. Like when it's like versus like having to travel on a short week versus having it at home on a short week, I think that is a bbig difference for sure.
Yeah. So did you have any more thoughts?
So those are the last of my stats, but I do want to go to our rapid fire questions where I have a couple talking points I wanted to bounce off of you and see what you thought about them. So first one, just rapid fire question. What are your thoughts on like first star outside receiver matchup against Terry McLaurin? Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like also a star player, but more of a slot guy. This is going to be the first like star outside receiver that the Packers are playing against. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
Yeah, so we'll see. Who do you think is going to match up with him? Is it going to be Keyshawn? Is Keyshawn?
I don't think we're going to travel. I think we play so much zone that I don't think it's going to be a traveling type thing.
Yeah. Valentine is our best cover corner, probably. And though I think Scary Terry is pretty physical. He's not a particularly
He's
big
not
guy.
big, but he is physical. Yeah.
Yeah. And then their other top receiver, Debo, is also physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the strength of Valentine's game.
That's the thing. Gonna have to be ready to tackle, like 100%.
Yeah, and so I'm hoping that Hobbs is going to be able to go. He was like getting close, I think, last week.
Mm-hmm.
Are these 4 days going to be enough for him to be able to go? Because he's a more physical tackler than Valentine is.
And if he is ready to go, like, is he going to be on a snap count? Like, is he going to be fully 100% ready to go? I think those are also fair questions to have, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think, the way that our secondary is built, it just seems to me like those one-on-one matchups are not really the meat of the defense.
We don't play that much man coverage. We play a lot of
that much man. There's a lot of shell coverage and safety help. And the structure of the defense, I think, just makes it easier on the corners. People keep dissing on our corners, and the passing defense is generally good.
Yeah, and like the corners weren't great last year, and the passing defense was pretty good. So yeah, and hopefully we can continue to do that this year, and continue the momentum from week one. But yeah, I just wanted to see what you thought about that, as like a first, star outside receiver matchup. The next rapid fire question I had for you was thoughts on the Matt LaFleur versus Dan Quinn first matchup since the playoff game against the Cowboys. Any thoughts on that kind of, is that a revenge matchup? Does that factor into the matchup at all for you? What are your thoughts?
Of anything we've talked about today, that is obviously the most predictive.
Hopefully. I hope so.
Because, that was epic. That was like one of the most fun games of the last couple of years, that win on the road in Dallas.
Yeah. But I had kind of not thought about it as context for this game, but then I was like, wait a minute. It's like the last time we played against Dan Quinn would have been that playoff game, like a good chunk of time ago, but I do think that is at least maybe a storyline. At least I'm sure they will bring it up on the broadcast, I guess is what I'm saying.
And they will talk about them a lot because of the connections that they have. The whole LaFleur versus Quinn thing will be brought up the whole game, and so that'll be a storyline as well.
And I'm sure they'll bring up Dan Quinn and Micah. Quinn having coached Micah with the Cowboys before. I'm sure they'll bring that up also.
Yeah, and he has talked about I guess he has a good relationship with Quinn from their days together in Dallas.
From what I hear, most players do, Quinn is generally a well-liked coach in the league.
Yeah. So I feel like, that for LaFleur versus Quinn, I think, you always like to beat your brothers and your good friends. So if they're like brothers or really close friends, you want to stick it to them.
Yeah. And because were they on the same staff in Atlanta at all? I can't remember if they overlapped.
Thinking.
I think they might.
I had the same impression, but was should I just bring that up out of the blue without checking on it?
I was I'm pretty sure they did, but I couldn't exactly pull it exactly, remember exactly what year it would have been. And then my final question, do you think we'll see any more Golden in week 2? 2 targets, 2 catches, 16 yards in week 1, 13 routes per FTN fantasy. Actually, surprisingly, the second most routes amongst wide receivers on the team. Any thoughts on, do you think we'll see any more Golden in this matchup?
I think we will. I think as the season progresses, he's going to get more and more time. I think he practiced more this week than last. He was full practice the last 2 days, though, virtual practice, walkthrough, whatever you want to call it. But it's still, I think he's trending towards playing more and getting more play in the offense. And I think
he ran a lot of routes last game. He was out there. He just didn't get. We didn't throw the ball very much. Also, it's because the only players who I think ran more routes than him were Kraft, Jacobs, and Dobbs. I think were the 3 that end up with more routes than he did.
Yeah, so I think they're going to be looking for him a little bit more, perhaps, and that they will want to stress the outside a little bit to try to soften him up. And we'll see if they can pack up the passing game again this week like they did last week.
I guess we'll see. Hopefully,
put those toys away early.
But okay, Dad, those are kind of the last rapid fire things I wanted to touch on. Is there any other, random thing that popped into your brain while we were talking that you didn't get a chance to write down, or should we move on to bottom line?
We can move about because we already talked about the Debo edition and how they have like two.
Talked about
potential...
the Tunsil edition, talked about their defensive line additions, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I feel like we touched on most of it. So, Dad, bottom line, Packers win if blank.
So I'm looking at the Packers defense in this one and how they're defending against Daniels specifically, in both in their effectiveness and style. So can they collapse the pocket on Daniels? So in a way, basically not losing their rush lane integrity, i.e., can they pressure and contain by just crushing the pocket around him so he has nowhere to go?
Totally. For me, it's Packers win if we can keep Jayden Daniels from making those second reaction plays and getting those big plays off of scrambles or off of rolling out of the pocket and, hucking it up downfield to like a receiver way downfield. Like if we can keep those from happening, I think we can win this one. But Dad, score prediction, what do you got?
I'm going to go optimistic here. And the Packers are going to win 24-14.
Okay. I've got Packers also, but I think it's going to be a really close game, 28-27. I think this could be a really fun matchup. Like, I think it's going to be a fun one. But Dad, anything else you wanted to touch on, or should we get out of here?
I think that's it. That's all I had. All the thoughts I had.
Okay.
My brain is empty.
Mine as well, but it was before. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. Check us out, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. This has been our preview for the Packers Commanders Thursday night football game. Excited for this one. Check us out on Blue Sky at Father Son Packer for updates on, Packers roster moves, injury reports coming up, updates on the game. Like we said, thank you again for listening. And until next time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.